Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video I want to do something a little bit different. I haven't been making a ton of videos lately because I always try to put out something that I feel like is useful to you guys. So what I'm going to be doing today is just taking you guys through what some of the safety equipment looks like and essentially all the major safety items you need if you want to get your car going down to something like 850s in a quarter mile. So one of the things I found, and I've been around the track for a little while, is just that there's a bunch of safety stuff and some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't. And if you pick up the NHRA rule book, it's not really that easy to read. So I just want to kind of show you guys some of these things and hoping that maybe this will help you guys out if you want to try to make your car go really fast. So far with this car, we've been going 950s with it. I did like a 952 at 1300 feet DA. So now I'm just taking a little bit of break until maybe August, until the weather gets a little bit cooler. I'm seeing like 180 degree intake air temps at almost 19 PSI with this car on ethanol. So I feel like we're starting to lean on it a little bit. I don't want to blow it up this summer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold off for a little while. And when it gets a little bit cooler out, I'm going to really lean on this thing. So we're leaving at like 10 PSI, going to be hoping to leave at 16 and maybe get like a bottom 9, like a 920 or a 930. So yeah, without further ado, let me take you through some of the major items here. And yeah, hopefully this helps you out. Now, one last thing before we get started. This video is just for informational purposes. This isn't gospel. There's a lot of little things in the NHRA rule book, like coolant overflow and certain types of fuel lines you can use and where you can mount your fuel pressure regulator. But I'm not going through the little details. I'm just going to go through kind of the major items. And chances are, if you have these items, you're going to have the other ones. Okay, so first things first, and probably most importantly, is a helmet. So you need a helmet as soon as your car hits 100 miles per hour. And specifically, you need a Snell rated helmet. So if you look in the helmet, just flip this for you. There we go. That Snell sticker down there tells you this is an SA 2020 helmet. Now, I think the Snell rating is good for 12 years. So you can actually still, if the helmet is in good shape, for example, you can go to Holley's website right now, you can buy a SA 2015 helmet that's good to 2027. And it's, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it as long as the helmet is still in good shape. Now, regardless of if you're going 100 miles an hour or not, on the drag strip, you really should have a helmet. And here's the reason why. I see probably 2 to 3 big accidents at the track every year when I'm there. They could be somebody hitting the wall. They could be, a car crossing over the center line. So as much as, if you don't go there lots, you may not see these things, but they totally happen. So something you got to remember is maybe your car is going 95 miles an hour. The guy beside you could very well be going 120, right? So it's totally worth the $200 investment to just buy a helmet. You've got it. And when you go to the track, just wear it. But you don't technically need this until you're going 100 miles an hour. All right, so the first major stepping stone from that is at 1150. So at 1150, you need an NHRA roll bar. Now, this is an actual cage, but let me just show you the difference. So essentially, this car's got the 2 door bars, it's got the main hoop, it's got 2 bars that go down into the trunk, and the only difference really between this cage and a roll bar is just these front bars and this bar up at the top. So this cage is good for 850, whereas a roll bar, if you didn't have these front bars, that's required at 1150. So if you have the roll bar, you're good from 1150 to 10.0. And if you have this cage, with the front bars on here, and there's some specifics, in the NHRA rules about this, but pretty much anyone who fabricates a cage is going to know exactly what they're doing here. But this cage here is good to 850 with one exception that I'll show you in a second. And that exception is this. So this is an NHRA chassis certification. So I had to take the car into a guy at the track. They did like a chassis cert day, and he kind of looked at the cage, went through the welds, checked the thickness of the tubing, And so the chassis cert is what's required after 10.0. So that chassis cert on this car means that this car is good to 850s in terms of cage. Okay, one other small note that people they don't usually look at, but technically at $11.99 you need metal screw and valve stems. Obviously, if you're mounting a set of, $1,000 tires on your car, just get the metal screw and valve stems. You don't have to obviously ever worry about that with tech again. So just buy them. Don't even think about it. So one other thing, if you have a manual car at $11.49, like $11.49 is kind of where things start to get expensive. So if you have a manual car at $11.49, you actually need an SFI bell housing, which you won't see on this car because it's an automatic. And you also need an SFI flywheel. So a lot of people don't really think about this. They're like, okay, well, my clutch and flywheel work, they're holding the power, what's the issue? Well, if you've ever seen a video of a flywheel explode, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, take a look at the video. Go find a video of a flywheel explosion, and you'll see that when that big heavy flywheel blows up, it tears your entire car apart. And the same thing can happen with automatic transmissions. All right, so one more thing. Once you've made it to your $11.49, you will need some SFI seat belts. So these guys have a expiry date on them. You got 5 points, essentially the two shoulders. You got the lap belts, and then you got the submarine belt, which clicks in there. So yeah, this is, like I say, this is where things start to get a little more serious at $11.50. Belts are pretty cheap. They're not expensive. And I don't know, they look pretty cool. So lots of people will run their stock belt because you need the factory seat belt in a vehicle to drive it on the road. I do not believe that SFI belts are actually street legal, which is kind of funny. And then, yeah, you're essentially, most people will run two belts in a real street car. So the real fun kind of starts to happen around the $10.99 mark. And one thing you'll need here, which is hard to see, but that is an SFI harmonic balancer down there. So that is quite an expensive item. I mean, they're probably $400 or $500 Canadian by the time you get it. And let me just take you through a couple other items that happen at this stage. Now, you will not be able to see, but one requirement at $10.99 is aftermarket axles, and they say axle retainers. This is commonly referred to as a C-clip eliminator. So what happens on a car with just a standard C-clip, for example, this Mustang with an 8.8, if you break an axle, the C-clip is like it's like a loose clip that's holding the axle into the diff, okay? So when that clip breaks, your wheel will walk out and it'll just bounce on you. And then your car is gonna drop down and you're gonna grind your quarter panel and you're gonna hit a wall, and it's gonna be a pretty horrible day. You're gonna oil down the track. So the idea is that at $10.99, when you get your aftermarket axle shaft, you also get the C-clip eliminator. And how the C-clip eliminator works is, instead of the C-clip holding your axle in on the inside, there's a special retainer that actually bolts through the backing plate of your rear brake, and it's press fit onto the axle. So if you snap an axle in there somewhere, it still can't come off. The axle flange cannot pull out of the diff unless you unbolted the 4 bolts. So that just means that, when you're running fast 60 foots, you got you got a lot of torque going through the rear end. You break an axle, your wheel does not come off, which is a very good thing. So strongly encourage that one. All right, next one, 135 miles an hour. This is like your kind of mid 10-second type of thing. You need a window net. So this is an SFI rated net. I don't even know if they make non-SFI rated ones. But essentially the idea with this guy is that if you flip the car over, you don't fall out the window. So this is kind of, you're playing pastime or something like that. As soon as you see a window net, that's kind of where you start to, it's like the first indicator that a car is going to be pretty damn fast. So yeah, 135 mile an hour. It's probably mid 10s for most people. If it's a turbo car, you could go 135s at a high 10 or even a low 11 if you have bad traction. So yeah, this one's definitely a requirement. And obviously you have to mount it to the cage. Okay, on the subject of 1099s with an auto, this is where things get somewhat challenging because you will need one of these guys back there. You can see that QuickTime in the SFI. That's a flex plate shield. Now what that does is it wraps around the top of the bell housing. It's like a 3-inch wide piece of steel, and it is a nightmare to fit in pretty much all cars. So this is the reason why a lot of automatics you'll see, if you have something like a Turbo 400, people will just put an SFI bell housing on, because on a Turbo 400 it's very easy. On a 4L80 it's a little more complicated and it's very expensive. So make no mistake about it, I will be putting an SFI bell housing on this car over the winter, but for now I meet the tech and safety requirements with this flex plate shield. Now, underneath of the car, I'll show you a video in a second here just about transmission blanket. So the blanket is like a ballistic blanket that wraps around, it straps on, and essentially the point of that guy is that if you ever have a drum explosion, it helps to contain it. So an interesting thing that some people don't know, and I really didn't know much about, is that in a 3-speed automatic transmission, when you hit neutral, you'll spin the drum at 2 times the RPM of the engine. So if you click third into neutral, at 7,000 RPM, your drum will spin to 14,000 and you will explode it because it cannot handle those RPMs because of the force, because centrifugal force, because of how much it's spinning. So again, like I said with the SFI flex plate, or with the SFI flywheel thing, just Google an automatic transmission explosion. It is very serious. Like, you don't want anything to do with that. So yeah, that's kind of a major item, and it's actually the reason why this car will be getting an SFI bell housing, even though technically it passes with the flex plate shield. I just don't want anything to do with like a converter or a transmission explosion. Alrighty, so underneath the car, this is the transmission blanket. It's a Summit Racing one, and it wraps around. And then way up there, you can kind of see the flex plate shield, but that thing's a nightmare. And then back under here is the drive shaft loop. So this is a pretty standard piece of equipment on a drag car, but again, this is designed, if you break your drive shaft, it's gonna kind of hold it in there so it doesn't blow out on you. So I've got this set up through the floorboards there, so you can see there's a little bit of work that goes into getting the drive shaft loop in there, fitting around the exhaust. Now, if you've made it this far, I'll just go into kind of the personal protective equipment side of things. Essentially, if you're going 1150s, you need an SFI single layer jacket, which is a 3.2A1. And if you want to go into the 9s, which is where I'm at, you need a 5-layer SFI like 3.2A5 jacket and pants. So I've actually got like a 1-piece racing suit. It's a little bit hotter than just a jacket and pants. I just bought it because, like, how many opportunities do you have in this life to buy a racing suit? All right, so this is the racing suit. You can see it's an SFI 3.2A5. I got blue because it was $100 cheaper than black. Shout out to Ehlers Motorsports in the background. See if he watches this video. He gives me a shout out back. But yeah, that's the suit. Like I say, you need a multi-layer suit once you go $999. So from 1150 to 10.0, you can just do a single layer jacket, which is a lot. It's a lot cooler. Like, it's like temperature wise, it's a lot. Like, this thing gets super hot, but it's a requirement. Another item, $999. You will need SFI gloves. Pretty self-explanatory. These gloves are kind of smooth palms. I would recommend, if you can get ones with like some sticky stuff on them, they would probably be better, but these are relatively cheap and they're pretty cool. Also, $999, you will require one of these guys. It's a neck collar. It goes under your helmet. SFI certified. These are cheap and easy. Now, when you really want to go fast, which is kind of where I'm getting to, you will need one of these guys, 150 miles an hour, a head and neck restraint. Now, how this works is you essentially strap these belts over you. This is a hybrid model. They don't all look like this, but essentially your belt straps go over here and these tethers clip onto your helmet. And now this helmet actually came with the holes for them. The point of this is so that your head does not rip off of your neck, as savage as that sounds. It's called a basilar skull fracture, and a lot of people have died from this. So this guy essentially goes over, your belt strap on here, and now if you get in a really bad accident, your head is tethered to your neck and your belts, and it does not come off of your body, which I think we can all agree is a very nice thing, to not have your head come off of your body. Now, also at $9.99, something that you will likely get to if you have one of these big turbos on your Fox body with an LS, you need an NHRA license. Now, I've just finished the licensing procedure. You need 6 passes. Essentially, you get 4 moderate passes and then 2 full speed passes. Your passes have to be faster, obviously 999 or faster. You need 2 people with their license to monitor you while you do the passes, so they'll sign off on each pass. And then you get the track official to sign off on the pass. They also do like a cockpit orientation test, so they blindfold you and they make you go through some things in your car just to make sure you can shut it off and get out of it if it's upside down on fire and you can't see. So that was a bit of a process. 6 passes sounds easy, but I just kind of ran into some bad luck on some days there, so it took me quite a few trips to the track to actually do it, just because some days I was getting like 2 passes, which is a little bit frustrating. So essentially, after you have the license, that's, you know, you're good for $9.99. All right, guys, last but not least, we will go on to the parachute. This is required at 150 miles an hour. So this car is actually only going 145, so I don't technically need it. But let me tell you, it makes a big difference. There is a lot of misconceptions that I heard about parachutes, that it was gonna, you know, rip you forward in your belts. There is nothing to worry about at all. This Simpson chute, it deploys so smoothly. This car is 3250 without me in it, and the parachute does not hit very hard at all, which is fantastic. It's a very smooth thing to deploy. Like I say, if it is your first time pulling one, absolutely nothing to worry about. And it really does make a huge difference in how fast the car stops. You know, like you can easily hit, for example, the track I go to, there's a few different exits. I could probably hit the first exit if I wanted with the chute, maybe not quite, but for sure easily the second. Whereas just on my factory brakes here, I might be at the 3rd exit normally. So this is the chute. There's essentially a cable, and I take this on and off for my trailer hitch, but this cable mounts onto here. It goes through this little loop, so when you pull it, there's a spring inside that pops it out. So we'll just go into the car quickly. This is the chute handle up here. That's obviously what operates it. So I chose a spot where I can kind of sit in the driver's seat. I can comfortably reach to the handle, and it's just like a push, this one, which is what I wanted. Some people put them back up here. I'm not a big fan of reaching above my head at 150 miles an hour, but maybe you are. So yeah, I'd say that about does it for this video. So I hope that I was able to give you guys a bit of insight on what the safety equipment looks like if you want to go 9s. So this car is good down to 850s. There's a lot of money, I have to say. This car has probably got as much money into safety stuff as it does into the actual car itself. So just cost wise, like if we're talking US dollars, the cage is like probably 2,500 bucks. Your SFI balancer is maybe $300. Flex plate shield's another 100 bucks. Transmission blanket, another 150 bucks. SFI flex plate, another 100 bucks. Chute, 500, 600, 700 bucks. Chute mount, you know, that's going to be another 500, 600, 700 bucks. Chute handle, like that one, Motion Race Works, I think it's around 150 or 200 bucks. The head and neck restraint, probably another 700 bucks. Fire suit, another 300 bucks. Gloves, 100 bucks. Helmet, 200 bucks. So there's a lot of money, obviously, that goes into the safety aspect of it. But there's also something very nice about being able to go to the track, nice safe environment, or as safe as an environment as you're going to find, and not have to worry about silly things like losing your license or hurting someone or somebody pulling out in a car. So I'm definitely a huge advocate of just going to the track with stuff. And if you want to go to the track with stuff and you want to go really, really fast, you unfortunately need to spend the money on safety stuff. And I think that you will find, as your car gets faster and faster, if you're interested in this, that the safety things, you don't really think about the cost a whole lot because you realize their benefit. So thanks again for checking out the video, guys, and we will see you on the next one.